Oops, I was wrong. Number 7 is still in the ready part of our practice assignment. So in number 7, we are given a graph that models potential business growth for 2 companies. Both companies are just getting started, and company A expects growth to increase at an increasing rate. Company B expects growth to increase at a constant rate. So when we look at the graph, the y-axis is profits in the amount of money, so dollars made, and the x-axis is labeled with time in years. So we want to keep that in mind. All right, so the graph of company A, we could see looks exponential. And that is what happens if their profit is growing at an increasing rate as opposed to a constant rate of change. That indicates exponential growth. So in part A, estimate when, if ever, the companies will have the same profit, and how do you see this in the graph? Well, remember, profit is on the y-axis. And in the graph, I only see one place where the 2 graphs have the same y value at the same time, and that is this point of intersection. So again, we're asked to estimate when. So when is going to be a time value, and we said time is what is labeled on our x-axis. And so if I'm guessing when that occurs, if I look at my x-axis, we're counting by 1 year, but only the even number years are labeled. So this would be 11 years. And somewhere between 11 and 12 years is when these companies would have the same profit. So I'm just going to estimate that. I'm going to say maybe at like 11.2 years. Again, any number between 11 and 12, that's closer to 11 than 12, is a good estimate here. So that's when we think they'll have the same profit. And then how do we see this in the graph? Well, this is where the graph for company A intersects the graph for company B. There's probably a way we could say that a little bit better, talk about profit, but it is the point of intersection. All right, in part B, we are asked which company has higher profits at the end of the comparison. So if I go out to 14 years, I can't see company A's graph anymore, but look at their graph in the time we can see it. It gets really, really steep. So if I were to keep going at 14 years, it looks like they would have profit that is way greater than where company B is at 14 years. Company A makes it all the way up there. So the company that has the higher profits at the end of the comparison is company A. And really what we could tell is beginning at that point of intersection, which we said was about 11.2 years, that from then on out, the graph of company A is above the graph of company B. So we could say the graph of company A is above the graph of company B. Just write ditto marks there. And really, therefore, that indicates the profit of company A is greater than that of company B. I'm just going to say is greater. Also, that little symbol with the 3 dots, that means therefore, if you've not seen that before. All right, in part C, what are the y-intercepts? And what do these mean in terms of making money? So on the graph, we said profit is what is on our y-axis, and each graph has its own y-intercept. So the graph for company B crosses the y-axis at negative 500, whereas the graph for company A crosses the y-axis at negative 1,000. So for company A, we said the y-intercept is going to be 0, negative 1,000. Remember, at the y-axis, our x-coordinate is always 0. And we said for company B, the y-intercept is at 0, negative 500. So the question is, what does this mean in terms of making money? So I know that you might not have taken like an economics class yet, but typically in business, you have all of your income. So this is literally money that comes in, maybe like revenue from sales, but your income is the money that the company takes on. But then you subtract from that like your expenses. So you have to pay employees. You have to, pay for the light and the electricity in your offices. You have to pay for materials for whatever product you might be manufacturing. So when you subtract the expenses from like the revenue or the income that the company makes, what you are left with is profit. So generally, like when profit is negative, that could indicate that at that time, it doesn't mean the company is not making any money. It just means that the expenses are greater than the amount of the money coming in. So for company A, for example, we could say the profit is negative $1,000 at time t equals 0 years. And this really just tells us that they have $1,000 more in expenses than money they're making. And then for company B, we could say the same thing. So like the profit is negative $500 at time t equals 0 years. So for both of these companies, because profit's negative, we know expenses are greater than the income of the company or the revenue. And that would cause profit to be negative. So initially, they're spending more money than they're making. That's another way to say that. But you could see that eventually both companies become profitable. So when does company A start making money? So really, I think the better way of asking this is, when do they start making a profit? Meaning they're always making money, but now they're making more than what they're spending. And how do we know this from the graph? Well, let's look at the graph of company A again. It's the exponential graph. And what I'm looking for is, when does their graph become positive? And it looks like that happens around, maybe not exactly, but maybe around 10 years. Because where we cross the X or T axis here, that's where profit would be 0. So we could answer this and say around where T is about 10 years. And how do we know this from the graph? Well, at T is approximately 10 years, the graph becomes positive. And so that implies that profit is positive, meaning that we are now making more money than we're spending. If you were to invest in either of these companies, which would you choose and why? Well, that might depend on the length of your investment. I would invest in either company for the first 3 years. But assuming that you're going to invest money long term, say more than 11 years, it would be best to invest in company A, because even though at first it takes company A a long time to become profitable, once they do, and once they catch up with company B, which again we said is around 11 years, now all of a sudden company A is making a lot of money. So that would be my argument, that we would want to invest in company A because company A becomes more profitable, meaning they have more money than they are spending, than company B around, I'm going to say around T is about 11, or we said really like 11.2 when we answered this earlier in part A. So around 11.2 years, or in part A, whenever we indicated that they have the same profit. After that, company A is always more profitable. So that is it for the ready section.